Welcome to Living Legacy Leadership, where you'll be introduced to insights, tools, and strategies to leverage creative living and giving. I'm your host, Donna Kim-Brand, creative brain trainer and legacy strategy coach. I help change makers and professionals who are deciding what's next to develop their thinking, learning, creativity, and collaboration skills along with leadership mastery for meaningful impact in their next phase of life. The guests and show content I bring to you each week, I'll address some unique aspect of learning, leadership, or legacy. This will help you raise your own game as a leader in business and life, and also showcase some extraordinary people who exemplify living legacy leadership. At least once a month, I also offer a training session to skill you in game changer thinking for your own application. So get your notebook ready or sharpen up your memory by tuning in your attention, and we'll dive right in. Now today, guess what? You get me. I was thinking today to share with you the topic of bringing your brain to work. And we're going to explore and describe how to apply your brain power to effectively navigate the job market from a couple of different angles, from getting a job to keeping a job by doing a good job, and then going for your next job. Now, a couple of things to think about. As a brain trainer, some of these things I do at this point without thinking about it. But what I am trying to do is pull out and make conscious some of what not only I, but you also do unconsciously because you've lived your life and you've figured things out. And in many areas of life, you are successful already. So some of this will feel like comfortable old hat in a way, and some of it, in fact, might just tickle you a little bit to consider new ways of approaching things. Now, statistically, it is said that as long as we stay healthy, then most people spend approximately 75,000 hours in work situations in our lifetime. That's a lot of time. And so we want to be making the most of it and the best of it, and doing it in a conscious way and by design rather than by default. Now, in terms of making use of cognitive science, about the new learnings about the brain, there are a couple of ways we can go about it. And I'm just going to infuse some of these little factoids and insights into the overall approach of using your brain at work as we go through this. So ideally, what you want to eventually be doing on a regular basis is developing your mind as you go through life. And in fact, statistically, just so you know, if you are parents who have university-aged students or children, or you're going back for an advanced degree yourself, bear in mind that 80% of college graduates do not go into the field they've studied in college, unless, of course, it's something very specific like medical school or accountancy or even engineering. But most students don't go into a career that they studied. So what are they doing in college then, that you might ask as a parent who's forked out multiple thousands in tuition and room and board costs? Yes, I am one of them with all three kids. They're actually developing their mind. They're developing skills like the ones I teach here, the thinking, learning, creativity, collaboration, time management, self-management, getting along with other people and developing their emotional intelligence, pacing, learning how to work when you need to, work hard, and then go ahead and play hard as appropriate and safe. So really, that's what that college experience is about, learning to be independent and successful and appropriate learners and thinkers through developing your mind and skills. Also, you want to be mastering various mental challenges. Like, what do you do when, how much sleep do you get? Do you oversleep? Do you undersleep? How do you build in social time, which is really important, but at the same time, not overdo it? How do you deal with the emotional drama that a lot of people bring to the scene in the workplace. Um, and really, this is a big one. I think a lot of people don't have a very big cushion of reserve to deal with people around them or even themselves in terms of how they act or react. They become reactive to everything in an up and down fashion, riding the ups and downs of everything that happens around them. And that is exhausting. So the more you can develop your emotional intelligence, then it will determine as well your level of engagement. And what we do know is that current workplaces are complaining, or workers are complaining, of a lack of involvement or a lack of engagement, partly because they're not invited, but partly because they themselves don't understand the importance of being engaged and being involved in their own career pathway and professional development. Once you know that that's an important part of mastering mental challenges, you'll pay much more attention to it. You'll make the effort to get involved and be engaged as appropriate. Now, there are several mental systems there in the cognitive science field. We might talk about the motivational aspects. Now, this is where our desires to succeed, our desires to be effective, stimulate us and inspire us to do a good job. Now, embedded in the word motivation is motive, which means movement. So we have to find that balance point between stability in terms of feeling comfortable and not always on edge with every new thing that we have to learn and pushing ourselves day after day, with the requirement that that happens. Most current job situations do require constant learning, constant churn of colleagues that you have to work with or management. And so you have to balance out how much of movement you can stomach, so to speak, which is good for you and good for your career, with a certain amount of stability and security, knowing that you're good enough and still on the move in terms of learning. Then there's the social mental systems. I think people underestimate the power of relationships at work, including informal relationships. I remember reading studies when I was doing my master's degree in linguistics about textile companies in the Carolinas, where, because it was so hot, they installed air conditioners, of course, trying to make the conditions better for the workers. But the air conditioners, turns out, once they were installed, productivity went down, and they just couldn't understand why. If people are more comfortable, they're not so hot, why is productivity going down? And it turns out that because the air conditioners were and the fans were so noisy, people couldn't chat while they were working. Now remember, they're in textile companies mostly doing assembly line work and kind of mindless sort of manual labor. So while they were doing that, they would just chat and develop relationships. When they could no longer do that, they were not motivated to work as hard or as consistently or as effectively. So just bear in mind, there are consequences to various actions we take that are worth considering ahead of time. But the main thing right here is how important social relationships are in the workplace. And then there are the cognitive aspects, of course, of mental processes. And bearing in mind that each one of us has our own set of filters, which give us a perception about the way things are or the way things should be, what we need to be doing to better our position as a person in an organization. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind as we look at both getting a job, keeping a job, and going for the next job. One is that over time, jobs and roles change. Now, sometimes jobs and roles change simply because of technological advances, or industry advances, industry development as it grows from a small organization to a larger organization, and also because you yourself might be developing and moving onwards into other positions and roles in that organization or in that industry. So along with that, what also changes are things like your goals and your aspirations. And as you become more mature in the workplace and more comfortable in your own skin, with your skill development, your relationships at work, your acclaim, your achievements, all those kinds of things, you might actually aspire to more and better. Same thing with your goals. You might want to reach higher or differently than you did when you started. And so just bear in mind, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Just design and point in the direction you really want to go. And that requires some paying attention and thinking about it. Something else that changes that people often don't think about, and that is as we go through life and we're in different stages of our life, even different decades of our life, our values may change. You might shift your perspective on work as life moves on for you. You might get married, for example, or take on a significant relationship. You might have children. You might be taking care of aging parents. Maybe you yourself or someone close to you that you're partly responsible for has health issues you need to deal with. Maybe even wealth issues. As you earn bigger salaries, you buy that bigger house, you buy that more expensive car, take those expensive vacations. Of course, those impact and influence your values and how you see the world and how you operate in the world. And even your friend network may change, as well as your professional network. So just bear in mind that it's a movable feast, and you'd be in a much better position if you are conscious of this and even designing it a certain way to a certain extent while still enjoying the flow of natural progression and development. Also, pay attention, or some key things to pay attention to are the importance, as I said earlier, of developing relevant skills and paying attention to relationships. A lot of times people will shoot up in an industry, and if you've been nasty to them on their way up, guess what? They may be nasty to you when you encounter them later. So just, be a good soul, be a good colleague, and be fair all along the way. Now, if you pay attention day by day and you're consciously seeking to do good jobs, what happens is you form memories that you can retrieve. Most people kind of slide through life. One day blends into another, one thing blends into another. The boredom or the mundane aspects just sort of make everything bland. And then when you try to remember, you don't have anything sort of bright and shining and outstanding in your memory bank. So the way to make sure that doesn't happen is simply pay attention in any present moment. And when you do, not only will you create those strong memories, which, by the way, in many cases we found in research will crowd out, for some people, addictions, spiritual vacuums, and so on and so forth, simply by paying attention in the present and creating memories that you cherish. The additional advantage is you also build up a pool of creative fodder, really, so that you can draw from and become much more creative in the future. Another thing to remember is that everything passes in time. Whether it's positive or negative, you either change it if you don't like it, whether it's a position at work or a colleague you have to work with, or the commute or the salary or whatever. If you can't change it, then